Let's get started. It is 2:00 Central Standard Time. It is time to begin our interview with Crystal Allen. My name is Christina. I am with Fort Bend County Libraries, and we are so proud to present our Author Spotlight Voices in Diversity interviews. And in this series, today we have Miss Crystal Allen. And Crystal Allen is the author of the Mya Tibbs Middle School series and the recipient of multiple accolades. She was inducted into the Texas Institute of Letters just last month, the 2018 Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators Award for Humor, the 2017 to 2018 Texas Bluebonnet Award Master List, the Indiana Young Readers List, the 2016 Spirit of Texas Reading Program author, the Kirkus list for best books of 2016, and the list just goes on and on and on. Crystal Allen was born to a military family in Germany and is the youngest of 5 children. She grew up in Indiana, moved to Texas, and works extensively with schools across Texas to encourage children to write their stories. In fact, she lives right here in Sugar Land, Fort Bend County. Some other fun facts about Crystal Allen. She is ambidextrous, which means she can write with both hands. Just like Lamar, one of her characters, she had asthma, but she has since grown out of it. She was also the corn shucking and multiplication queen of her 3rd grade class. And you can find out more about her at crystalallenbooks.com. Welcome, Crystal Allen.
Thank you very much. I'm very excited to be here.
Can you tell us about your journey to becoming an author?
Sure. Just like you said, I'm an Army brat, and I've lived in a lot of places, and mostly on Army bases. So I went to school at schools that were on the Army base. But we moved to Indiana, where my grandparents have a farm, a huge farm. And it was going to be my first time in public school. And it turned out to not be very good for me. I had a hard time making friends. I didn't know what to do. I didn't really like school after, and this is public school. But it was library day. And we were walking down to the library, and the librarian stopped me and she said, "Crystal, we're so glad you're here. Welcome to our school." And I'm thinking, you're not glad that I'm here. I haven't made any friends. Nobody seems to like me, and I don't know what to do about that. I didn't say that out loud, but that's what I was thinking. She said, "Come to my desk. I have something for you." And so I followed her, and she gave me a copy of, let's see if I have it here. I don't have it in front of me, but she gave me a copy of, I can't think of it now.
This was the school librarian, right?
Yes. This is the school librarian, and she gave me a copy of this, if you all can see it.
Yes.
Charlotte's Web. And I had never seen that book before, but it had animals on the cover, and I was living on a farm, so I read it, absolutely fell in love with it. Not for the spider, because I don't even like spiders. Not for the pig. I mean, it's a pig. Wilbur's a pig. But the girl, Fern, was just like me, Christina. And she lived on a farm, so did I. She loved animals, so did I. She had a brother, I had 2. And she became my friend. And E.B. White showed me how to write about a character, or actually showed me how to create a character so that people could understand that character. And I began to think, man, maybe that's my problem. The kids at school don't know anything about me. So I started writing things down, and I started to make friends once they realized all the things that I liked. And I began to write all the time because I realized writing got things done for me. And I just continued to write. And that's kind of how I got started, was the librarian actually giving me a book that kind of looked like me, which was Charlotte's Web.
So it started with farming. So
Yes, the things that we had in common. I think that's the closest thing she had at that time. I don't think she had many diverse books in her library, but what she did have was a book about a girl on a farm.
Yeah.
And since I lived on a farm, she gave that to me, and it really did make a difference in my journey towards writing.
That's amazing. How old were you at the time?
I was second or third grade.
And then you started writing ever since.
Ever since I wrote that letter, I started writing down things like I like hot dogs with extra ketchup, and I like to play hand clapping games at recess, and I like to play kickball. And I took that little letter and I put it in my classroom, hoping that, you know, some of the kids would see it. I put my name on the top, and maybe they'd play with me at recess. Maybe there was something on that list that they liked too. And I just took that thing from E.B. White, what he did with Fern, you know, just talking about her, and made me see her. And I wanted my classmates to see me. And maybe they would play with me. And true enough, two little girls walked up to me and said, "Is this your letter with all this neck work? Is this your letter?" I said, "Yes." "So you want to play with us at recess or what?" I said, "I do." And so I began to play with these two little girls with all this attitude, okay? They had tons of attitude, but I will give them credit for my neck work, because I can move my neck from this way all the way over to this person and talk to a crowd full of people and emphasize things. And anybody who can work their neck knows that it is an attribute. So I I love the fact that writing helped me with that too.
Even though it appears you already had quite the personality before writing, did writing help you blossom as a person?
Absolutely. And I really think farm life did that. Our farm was very secluded. I had no kids around me at all. So once I got home from school, I had no playmates. There was no one's house I could go to, because our farm was even a mile from our mailbox. So we were very secluded. So all I had was the animals. So I would say things to them, and if they moved their mouth at all, I would pretend I knew exactly what they were saying, and we would have conversations, and things would be funny sometimes. And you know, I love to laugh. I love to laugh, and I really believe that the animals help create my personality. Some of my author friends tell me, "Crystal, really? You are a 12-year-old boy inside. That's what you are. You're in an adult body, but you're really a 12-year-old boy. That's how come you're able to write so well." And I think they're right. You know, maybe that's true. And I just run with that, Christina.
When did you decide to make the jump to professional writing?
I think it was after I got out of college, and I still had that itch to write. I found a class that promised to help me become an amazing writer. And that class was $200. I'm thinking, well, I just got out of college, and this is what I want to do. I went to that class, Christina, and this professor, there were like 7 of us in the classroom. This professor didn't even say good morning to us when he walked in. Hello, he didn't even acknowledge we were in the room. Walked straight to the board, this is when there was still only chalkboards in the room, okay? Grabbed a piece of chalk and just started writing. Number 1, he wrote a sentence in a line. Number 2, wrote a sentence in a line. Number 3, wrote another sentence in a line. Number 4, wrote another sentence in a line. Put the chalk down, and he said, "If you follow my 4 sentences exactly, you will create amazing stories. Thank you, and have a nice day." And he left. And I was thinking, this cannot be true. I just paid this man $200, and I think I just got played. I think he took my $200 and left. But to make this long story a little shorter, Those 4 sentences were money. He was so on point that I use those 4 sentences when I go to schools and I teach not just the students, but even some of the teachers how to write. It's so incredibly easy, and it's become what I still, it hasn't become, but I still use it when I'm writing. And it is so powerful. I'm just amazed. I'm just amazed at it.
After you took the writing class, what did you do next?
Well, I began to write. I started using those 4 steps. And okay, I'm going to say this, and I want you all to know that I do not need medication. Let me just say that to you before I start with that little caveat. I was sitting and I was watching an episode of CSI, and this character popped up in my head, just walking around like he owned my brain. And I didn't recognize him. He didn't look like my sons. He did not look like my nephews or anyone I knew. And but I began to focus more on what was going on in my head than the television. And this young man walked down a street and into a bowling alley. And I could almost hear the pins, the balls hitting the pins. And I thought, who is this kid? And it finally came to me that this was a character who wanted me to write his story. And I began to just write things down as I saw them. And he ended up being Lamar, the very first book that I wrote. But it took me a while to actually give him a pulse, to make his heart beat, because I didn't know what I didn't know. And I needed to learn so much more about my craft. So I went to conferences and I went to actual writing boot camps. I went to anything that I possibly could. And you know what, Christina, I was really close to giving up because things just weren't going the way that I thought that they should. And I ended up talking to a friend who lives in Kansas City. And she said, I'm hosting a conference here. I want you to come. There are going to be a lot of different publishers, editors represented at this conference. And there's a particular class I want you to take. I'm just going to enroll you in this class. I'm like, okay, whatever, I'm there. 2 weeks before that conference, I got an email from the teacher of that class that she enrolled me in, telling me and everyone else that was enrolled in that class that she wanted us to write a story. The story had to be no longer than 800 words. And she gave us 5 words that had to be in the story. And I'm freaking out now because I'm thinking, how in the how am I supposed to do this in 2 weeks? Well, sometimes when I write and, you know, I become unsure of what my next step is, I'll write things in rhyme.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought, well, you know, I'm going to do that. So I did. I wrote a story in rhyme. I took it to that conference. I read it in class. She absolutely loved it. And I got up to go to the next session of classes, and this lady tapped me on my shoulder and said, is that story for sale? And I said, yes. And she said, you know, she gave me her name and she said, I'm from Scholastic. And I absolutely love that story that you just read. It's almost perfect the way that it is. And I'd like to buy it and put it with our Read and Rise magazine. And I was just blown away by that. So my whole ordeal is the very first thing I ever sold was my homework from a conference. Who does that happen to, right?
Lightning strikes, yeah.
It gave me it validated me in a way that I needed to be validated. And it gave me confidence to keep going. But you never know, when that one thing is going to happen, so you never give up. And that actually started my career. Well, this was the little story I sold to Scholastic. I don't know if you all can see it. It was online. It's called A Purple Hat for Mom. And it was sold and given to the Urban League to use for their programs for after schoolers. That gave me more confidence to work on Lamar. And so I went back and started working on Lamar again, went to an SCBWI. For those who don't know what that is, that's Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators. It is a huge corporation, or it's a huge group for writers and illustrators. And if that's something you're interested in doing, I highly recommend that you go to one of the meetings. And I went to a conference, and I met my agent there. I'd written a couple chapters. She actually critiqued my chapters, asked for some more, and it just kind of went on like that until she felt comfortable enough to say, I would like to represent you. And we've been together since 2008.
So, about Mya Tibbs.
Well, I'll tell you, when I created Mya Tibbs, she was not my character. I actually I did not come up with Mya Tibbs. My publisher did. My publisher asked me to create an African-American Ramona Quimby. Some of you all may not know who Ramona Quimby is, but maybe if there are some older listeners in here, you'll know who Ramona Quimby is. And that was very hard for me to do. But I was able to create Maya, and people seemed to like her. So I'm just so glad I didn't give up. And that's what I'm encouraging you to not do. Do not give up if you're going to continue to write, or actually whatever you're doing.
How do I become a writer or an artist?
Well, Maria, once you start writing something, you are a writer. There's a difference between a writer and an author. For instance, an author is someone who gets published. So a writer, whenever you're writing, and listen, that just because you don't get published doesn't mean you're not an amazing writer. Continue to write, continue to work on your craft. You never know when something could happen. Just like I told you, the very first thing I sold was my homework. Who knew that was going to happen? It could happen to you too. At a place where you would never think something like that could happen, somebody could say, Maria, could I buy this? Or would you work on a story with me? The key to this is don't stop.
After all this time persistently and constantly writing, do you believe in writer's block?
I don't. I don't believe in writer's block, and maybe it's just me, but I believe when you cannot figure out what to do next, it's because your character is saying, I'm not going any further because you messed up. You're making me go left and I wanted to go to the right. Or you're making me ride a bike and I wanted to run to that place. Or you're making me eat something that I don't like and I am not doing anything else until you fix that. And I think that what people see as writer's block is really kind of like an author interference, where we have decided that we're going to run the show when it should never be like that. It is an honor for us to receive a character that says, I want you to write my story. I've got a story for you to tell. And that character stays with you like day in and day out. And you think about the story every day. But when you start trying to invoke your own ideas into the story, to me, that's when things will come to a halt. And they're not going to move until you allow your character or whatever is driving your story to drive it and you get out of it.
So that is hours of writing. So even if you wrote the perfect scene and it works for you, if it doesn't go with the flow, then you just gotta scrap it and then go open that blank page and keep going.
Well, you might not have to scrap it. It might just be one simple thing. But that one simple thing might be simple in that scene, but as you get to the end of the story, that one thing is going to be so important for your character, even if you can't see it yet.
Mm-hmm.
It's creating literature is quirky sometimes. And some people like to, write it out from beginning to the end.
Mm-hmm.
And other people like to do it as they go. Either way, something is driving that story. And you got to be true to that. You got to be true either to your character or the plot, whatever it is. It doesn't mean you have to scrap it, but you just need to know what you did in that story instead of letting your character or the plot unfold on its own.
How do you let nonfiction characters control the narrative?
Good afternoon. Well, you are just simply amazing, number one.
Oh, thank you.
I mean, from the very introduction, it's just like the wow factor. My question is, fiction versus nonfiction. I've always done fiction. And now I think I have two, which would not be that I haven't been able to start. And it kind of ties back to what she was talking about, the block. And so that was very helpful what you said, because maybe I'm thinking too hard on, because it's not fiction, the character. And maybe I need to let the character breathe whatever it is that needs to go on the paper. So if you could just maybe give me one little insight on that, because I know I've probably talked a little bit too much.
No, not at all, Zelda. Fiction and nonfiction are starting to come a lot closer to each other than they've been in the past. And that is because many nonfiction writers are giving their character a personality. In the past, it would just be facts upon facts upon facts about a particular inventor or a person or something of that nature that is real and true. But what people are starting to do now is, what was that person feeling when they were trying to do that and they failed?
Oh, I love that. I never
How
thought
were they feeling when that happened? Did they think that they weren't going to? And for you to give that person a pulse, Zelda, to make them come to life, will make your nonfiction story jump off the page.
Oh,
because people will start to relate to your character and what they were doing and how maybe they tried something once and it failed.
And what
and they'll be able to understand that.
That's an OMG moment you just gave me.
Yay.
Thank you.
And let me tell you, that corn shucking queen thing, that was more my grandmother than anything. She got her corn shucked for free. So, that's what that was about.
Can you discuss your work with Brown Bookshelf?
Sure. And the Brown Bookshelf is a group of authors and illustrators of color. And what we do is we try to highlight other authors and illustrators of color who may be flying under the radar, who are not getting the marketing or attention that maybe other books in the market are getting. And so we highlight them. And our biggest program is during Black History Month, where we highlight one creator every day. So it could be a debut author, or it could be an author who is midlife that has come out with a new book, or it could be an illustrator, or even a trailblazer, someone who helped us along the way. You can go to thebrownbookshelf.com and see every person that we have highlighted over all of the years that we've been in existence. Recently, the Brown Bookshelf has joined hands with Highlights for Children, who is also a huge believer in diversity, not just for books, but for the creators of books. And in an effort to try to get publishers to see how important it is that there are more books, not just diverse books in the libraries, but those diverse books be written by the diverse creators. How important that is. And we have been able to hold hands and come up with a program that is going to allow new authors and midlife authors to come to the Highlights for Children's home, which is in the Poconos. And it's absolutely beautiful. And hone their craft, learn from members of the Brown Bookshelf, and there will be publishers who will be sending members from their publishing house to these events. It's going to be, I think we're going to have 12 of them. They'll be sending them to these events to possibly sign some of these authors or illustrators to contracts and get to know or understand the life and the surroundings and the language of creators of color.
Mm-hmm.
So we're very, very excited about that. This is something, this could be a game changer, a huge game changer for creators of color. And I'm very excited about it.
Can you also talk about the extensive work you're doing in schools?
I can. You know, when I was in school, no one ever told me that I could be an author. As much as I loved writing, and my grades were amazing in writing stories. Teachers used to write all over them, wow, this is amazing, blah, blah, blah. But no one ever told me that I could become an author. I didn't even look that way. And I want to make sure that that doesn't happen with the children of today. So when I go to, when I am invited for an author visit, I am so completely off the chart. When it comes to my presentation, I talk about my books, maybe 5 minutes. I talk about myself about 5 minutes. And then we talk about writing. And I introduce the students to these 4 simple steps. And my presentation becomes interactive. And once I know that the students understand those 4 steps, I challenge them to enter a writing contest that I do, which is incredibly popular. The students write stories, turn them into their librarian. The librarian picks 15 stories from those that are turned in. She forwards me those 15 stories from that particular school, and I put them on my website. And I leave them there for a whole year with the children's names on them. You can go to my website, crystalallenbooks.com, and look under the tab called Strike Writers. You will see thousands of stories written by students. And then I go back to the schools. After that's over, I go back to the schools and I take lunch. I'll take a portion of the monies that the school pays me and I buy lunch for my winners. So then I have lunch with them. I critique their stories. We talk about writing. So we have a party about writing and I let them know why they were winners and try to encourage them to continue to write, not because they have to, but because they can. And it is a superpower that they have. So that's how I roll. That's how I do my author visits.
And now for the secret of Crystal Allen's writing.
I'm going to give you the 4 sentences that the professor gave to me. I paid $200. You're getting them for free. Write these down. For those of you all still in school, you can use them now. You can use them when you get to college. You can use them if you want to become a writer or an author, I mean. You can use them if you're ever interviewing someone. I believe you can use this even in nonfiction as you begin to hone in on your character. You'll be able to use these. Number 1, this is a story about blank. That's where you're going to put the name of your character. Everything about your character you can put underneath that. But this is the first piece of your writing process. Number 2, who more than anything wants to blank. And I encourage you all to put those blanks at the end too. Draw a line, put a blank there. This is your plot. This is what your story's going to be about. This is what your character wants more than anything. And you know, you may start off with thinking that your character wants to win something, but really what they want is for their dad to love them, or for their dad to accept them for who they are, somebody who might not ever win a race.
Wow.
It just might end up that way as you write the story. But when you start off, it could be to win a race, who more than anything wants to blank. Number 3, but can't because of blank. That is the problem that your character is going to run into as they try to do what they want to do more than anything, or get what they want more than anything. They're always going to run into a problem that they have to hurdle, that they have to get over, that they have to figure out the answer to. And that's where number 4 comes in. So he or she blanks. This is how they'll fix that problem. You can watch a television show tonight, and they will have this 4-step process. You can take these 4 things and sit in front of your favorite sitcom. You're going to get the main character. You're going to find out what they want. There's going to be a problem in the sitcom, and towards the end, they're going to fix it. This is what producers use for movies. This is what authors use, and what we like to call this is a log line, L-O-G, line. I fill these out, I tape them to my computer, and I focus. It helps me stay focused on what I'm doing. This way you won't get a moose in a love scene, or you won't get a bunch of monkeys taking a lunch in the cafeteria at a middle school. This 4-step process will keep you focused from the beginning to the end of your story. It works 99.9% of the time. You could make a story about absolutely anything.
Thank you so much. So you can find her books, of course, at Fort Bend Library. I only found 2 of them because the rest are checked out. And you can get them at the library. Where else can we find your books, Crystal?
You can find them on Amazon. You can find them at Blue Willow Bookshop and Barnes & Noble. You can find them just about anywhere.
Fantastic. All right. And you can also find out more about her at her website, which I put in the chat, crystalallenbooks.com. And you can find out more about events like this at www.fortbend.lib.tx.us/events. Thank you very, very much for coming. Thank you for sharing your time with us. And thank you, of course, Miss Allen, for spending your afternoon here.
Absolutely.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you all so much.
So exciting.
Yay!